It always begins with the quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't comfort, but unsettles. You know it, the hum of the engine, the rhythmic thump of tires meeting the road, and nothing else, no voices, no laughter, no signs of life, except the faint glow of the dashboard and the pale ribbon of highway stretching endlessly ahead. It's strange how peaceful it can seem, how easily the mind settles into that illusion of safety. You're alone, yes, but you're in control. The road is empty, and the night is yours. That's what everyone believes, until they realize the road has a life of its own. There's something different about highways at night. They hold a kind of silence that breathes. The air feels thick, like it's listening. The further you drive, the more the world seems to fade away, replaced by something darker, heavier. The lines on the road begin to blur, the same white dashed markings stretching on, hypnotic and endless. The streetlights disappear, the sky turns deeper than black, and that's when you start to feel it, the shift. That moment when the night stops being still and starts being watchful. I remember once driving through a stretch of road that cut through miles of nothing. No towns, no houses, not even a gas station for hours. Just fields and fences and shadows. It was past midnight, the kind of hour when even your thoughts grow quiet. For a while it felt almost serene. Then, somewhere between 1 mile marker and the next, I noticed the fog, thin at first, drifting across the road like smoke. I didn't think much of it. Just weather, just the night. But then it thickened. It rolled across the headlights, swallowing the world whole. I slowed down, leaned forward, trying to see, but there was nothing, no road, no sky, just white emptiness, and the sound of my own heart beating in my ears. That's the thing about driving alone at night. You start to notice sounds that shouldn't matter, but suddenly do. The faint clicking of the engine cooling between miles, the whisper of wind against the window, the creak of the seat when you shift your weight. Little things that seem harmless in daylight, but under the spell of darkness, they grow louder, closer, almost alive. You tell yourself it's nothing, you turn up the radio, but static fills the speakers, a strange, uneven noise, like breathing. And then you realize you've been holding your breath. It's easy to convince yourself that fear is imagination, that the goosebumps rising on your arms are just a reaction to the cold, not to the feeling that something unseen is in the back seat, just beyond the reach of the mirror. You tell yourself not to look, because you know how stories like this go. The moment you do, the illusion breaks, and maybe it's better not to know what's following you in the dark. There's a strange comfort in headlights. They stretch just far enough to let you believe you're safe, to make you think the world still exists beyond that glow. But the darkness beyond them, what if it's not empty? What if something waits there, matching your speed, watching your every mile? People say highways are lonely places, but I don't believe that. Not really. Loneliness implies absence, but out there, in the middle of nowhere, you can feel the presence of something. You can't name it, you can't see it, but you know it's there, and it knows you're there too. Sometimes, I think that's what the road does. It tests you. It asks how much silence you can bear before you start hearing things that aren't there. Before the shadows beside the guardrails begin to move. Before the shapes in the fog start to take form. It's not the drive that unnerves you. It's what the drive awakens. The longer you're alone, the more your thoughts begin to unravel, and the night listens to every one of them. They say the human mind can play tricks in the dark. That fear invents faces where there are none. But what if it's not invention? What if fear simply reveals what was always there, hidden from sight until the world grows quiet enough for you to notice? Maybe that's why so many people have stories about highways they'll never drive again. roads where they heard whispers from empty seats, where they saw figures by the roadside that disappeared when headlights touched them. Maybe those roads remember. Maybe they collect every scream, every secret, every lost soul that never made it home. And maybe that's why it feels wrong when you're the only one out there. The road isn't meant to be empty. It carries too much history, too much grief, too many endings. You can almost feel it beneath your tires, the weight of it, the echo of others who drove before you. Some made it to the next town, some didn't, and if you listen closely enough, sometimes the wind carries their stories, a cry muffled by distance, a voice you can't quite understand. The illusion of control is powerful, isn't it? You grip the steering wheel tighter, eyes fixed ahead, convincing yourself that as long as you keep moving you're fine. But deep down you know the truth. The highway is vast, you are small. And the night, well, the night doesn't belong to you. It never did. There's a moment in every long, lonely drive when the headlights seem to dim, even if they don't, when the edges of the road blur into nothing, and your reflection in the mirror looks almost unfamiliar. That's when you realize how thin the line is between the world you know and whatever lies just beyond it. One wrong turn, one flicker of distraction, one heartbeat too long staring into the dark, and the road might never end. Some say that fear of the highway is irrational, but I don't think so. I think it's instinct, a whisper passed down through generations, warning us that not all paths lead where they seem to, that the world grows thinner at night, that between 1 mile and the next, something unseen may choose to walk beside you. So if you ever find yourself driving alone, deep into the night, and you feel that uneasy silence settle around you, don't ignore it. Don't dismiss it as nerves or imagination. The night has its own language, and sometimes that silence is not empty. Sometimes it's a warning, and maybe, just maybe, it's reminding you that on certain roads, you're never truly alone. It always starts small, doesn't it? The things that unsettle us rarely arrive with noise or chaos. They whisper first, a flicker of movement in the distance, a shadow in the corner of your eye, something that feels almost ordinary until it isn't. The night has a strange way of dressing danger in the clothes of familiarity, and sometimes it takes the shape of a stranger on the roadside. Imagine driving alone through miles of darkness. The road stretches endlessly ahead, your headlights carving a narrow path through the night. You haven't seen another car for what feels like hours. The air feels heavier here, thick with something you can't quite name. Then, just beyond the next bend, you see it. A figure standing by the shoulder of the road. Maybe it's a man, maybe a woman, you can't tell from the distance. They're just there, motionless, a pale outline against the dark. At first your heart softens. It's late, cold. Maybe they're stranded. Maybe they need help. You slow down because that's what good people do. That's what you'd want someone to do for you. But as your headlights draw closer, something inside you hesitates. Instinct whispers, don't stop. Something about the stillness feels wrong. Their body doesn't move quite right, their posture too rigid, their face turned just slightly away, as if they know you're coming but don't want you to see. You grip the wheel tighter. For a second you think of pulling over anyway, but then your eyes meet theirs, or where their eyes should be, and your blood runs cold. They aren't looking at you. They're looking through you. And before you can even breathe, the moment changes. One blink, and they're gone. You tell yourself you imagined it. Fatigue, headlights, the tricks of a tired mind. You turn the music up, anything to drown out the echo of what you just saw. But when you glance in the rearview mirror, you see it again. Far behind now, standing in the exact same spot, unmoving, watching, the road bends, and they vanish from sight. But you can't shake the feeling that something followed you when you passed. That's the thing about roads like these. They remember things. Some people say there are spirits left behind on the highways, those who died waiting for help that never came, still standing by the road hoping someone will stop. Others say there are darker things, things that wear the shape of desperation because it's the one thing that makes us hesitate, the one thing that makes us let our guard down. I once heard a story about a man driving cross-country. It was winter, snow falling in thick sheets, and he'd been on the road for over 10 hours. Just past midnight, he saw a woman standing beside a broken-down car, her arm raised, waving weakly for help. He almost drove past her, but something in her movement, a trembling kind of plea, made him stop. He rolled down his window and asked if she needed a ride to the next town. She didn't speak. She just nodded and opened the back door. He glanced at her through the rearview mirror, trying to make small talk, but she stayed silent. Her head was down, her hands folded tightly in her lap. He noticed her dress was torn, her skin pale, like she'd been out in the cold far too long. As they drove, the air inside the car grew colder. He turned up the heat, but it didn't help. The silence pressed against him, heavy and unnatural. When he looked up again, she wasn't there. The door was still locked, the seatbelt still buckled, but she was gone. He stopped the car, heart racing, stepping out into the snow to look around. Nothing. No footprints, no figure. Only the echo of her voice, soft, distant, saying, "I never made it home." He drove the rest of the way with the radio off, unable to shake the feeling that she was still somewhere near, still searching for someone to notice her. There are hundreds of stories like that, each one beginning the same way, with someone alone driving through the night, seeing a stranger who shouldn't be there. Some are kind, some pleading, and some just standing still, watching, waiting, and not all of them disappear when you pass. A woman once shared her story about a stretch of road she swore she'd never drive again. Late one night, she saw a man standing beside a mile marker, holding what looked like a lantern. He was dressed oddly, in clothes from another time, his face shadowed by the brim of a hat. She slowed down, thinking maybe he'd been in an accident. But when her car drew close enough for her headlights to touch him, he lifted his head, and what she saw wasn't a face. It was a hollow, a blank shape where features should have been. She slammed her foot on the gas, and for a moment, the road behind her went completely dark, as though her headlights had been swallowed whole. When light returned, he was gone. But she swore, when she reached home and checked her rearview mirror for the last time, she saw a handprint smeared across the inside of her back window. These stories aren't just tales for campfires. They're warnings, echoes of the things people have seen and can't explain. Maybe they're lost souls, maybe they're reflections of guilt, sorrow, or something older that feeds on empathy. But whatever they are, they share one truth. The night knows when you're alone. It knows when you slow down. And it knows that somewhere deep inside, you still believe in helping strangers. The danger doesn't come from what you see. It comes from the hesitation between fear and kindness. That 1 second of doubt. That moment when your heart says stop, but your mind says go. Because sometimes the person standing by the road isn't lost. Sometimes they're waiting for you. So, the next time you're driving through the dark and you see a figure by the roadside, don't look too long. Don't let the night trick you into thinking you're needed. Some shadows stand where the living should never stop. And some strangers aren't waiting to be found. They're waiting to be followed. There's a certain kind of fear that only comes when you're being followed. It's subtle at first, a quiet unease that crawls beneath your skin. You glance into the mirror, expecting to see nothing out of the ordinary, and there it is, 2 headlights in the distance. At first, you think nothing of it. You tell yourself it's just another traveler on the same road, someone heading somewhere like you. But as the minutes stretch into miles and the car behind you keeps perfect pace, that comfort begins to twist into something darker. It starts the same for everyone. You're driving alone, the night thick and endless around you, and you notice a truck behind you, a big one, its engine growling, its lights glaring too bright in your mirror. You change lanes. It changes too. You slow down. It slows with you. You speed up, trying to put some distance between you. But those headlights don't fade. They follow. At first it feels almost ridiculous to be afraid. But the longer it goes on, the harder it is to ignore that feeling rising in your chest. That this isn't coincidence. I remember a story once told by a man who drove deliveries through the desert highways. The nights out there are long, the roads straight and empty, and the only thing separating you from the darkness is the fragile beam of your headlights. He said one night, around 2 a.m., he noticed a truck appear behind him. No sound, no gradual approach, just suddenly there, headlights filling his mirrors. He didn't think much of it, until he realized it had been following him for over an hour. Every turn he made, every rest stop he passed. The truck stayed behind, steady and deliberate. He tried to shake it. He took an exit that led nowhere. Just a dead stretch of road lined with abandoned buildings. The truck followed, keeping distance but never vanishing. When he stopped, it stopped. When he turned off his headlights, its lights dimmed, but didn't go out. And then, in that moment of silence, he felt it, the weight of being watched. He said he sat there for nearly 5 minutes, staring into the mirror, waiting for something to happen. Then, without warning, the truck's horn blared, long and low, echoing across the empty road like a scream. It didn't move closer. It didn't back away. It just stayed there, idling. And in the faint glow of its headlights, he thought he saw a shape in the driver's seat. Something that wasn't moving, something that didn't look quite human. He started his car again and sped off, pushing the engine as hard as he could. The truck followed for another 10 miles, until it suddenly disappeared. Just gone. No turn, no exit, no sound. One moment it was there, and the next the road was empty. He pulled into a gas station an hour later, shaken, exhausted, and when he got out of his car he noticed handprints on the back bumper, dark greasy smears like something had been pushing. That story stayed with me, because there's something about being followed that breaks the human sense of safety. You can't reason with it, you can't explain it away. It's not the idea of being attacked. It's the knowledge that something is out there, keeping pace, watching you, waiting for a moment you can't see coming. Another woman once told her story, a college student driving home late after visiting friends. It was raining hard, the kind of rain that makes the wipers useless and the world blur into streaks of silver and black. She noticed a pair of headlights behind her on the highway, bright and steady. Every time she changed lanes, they followed. When she sped up, they did too. Her heart began to pound. She told herself to stay calm, but the fear built with every passing minute. Finally, she pulled off into a gas station, figuring if it was just coincidence, the car would keep going. But it didn't. It pulled in too. She froze. Her hands trembled as she reached for her phone. Before she could dial, the car behind her honked twice, short, sharp bursts, and then flashed its high beams. She didn't know what to do. Then, just as suddenly, it sped off, disappearing into the rain. When she finally got out, her knees weak, she went inside the station to collect herself. The clerk stared at her, pale. He asked if she was okay. She nodded, still shaken. Then he said, "You didn't see him, did you?" Her confusion must have shown because he pointed out the window to the car she'd been driving. "There was a man in your back seat." She ran outside, but there was no one there. Only the back door slightly open, rain pooling on the seat. The stranger who'd followed her wasn't the threat. He was trying to warn her. That story haunts me every time I think about how easily the roles of hunter and protector can blur in the dark. Sometimes what follows you means harm, and sometimes it's trying to save you. But when you're alone, driving through the night, how can you ever know the difference? Fear on the road isn't just about ghosts or killers or trucks that vanish. It's about uncertainty. That feeling that no matter how fast you drive, something is just behind you, close enough to touch, but never close enough to see clearly. It's the unknown presence that crawls into the mind and whispers, "You're not alone." Many truckers tell stories of seeing things on long hauls, figures in the middle of the road that disappear when headlights touch them, phantom vehicles that tailgate for miles before fading like smoke, radios crackling with voices that repeat their names. Some dismiss it as fatigue. But there's a rhythm to these stories, a strange consistency that suggests the highways themselves. Remember, the people who vanished, the ones who met their end between one town and the next, they never really left. So maybe that's what the man in the desert saw. Maybe that's who the young woman's follower was trying to protect her from. Maybe those endless roads hold more than just miles. They hold echoes of everyone who's ever been lost there. And perhaps that's why when you look in your rearview mirror and see headlights too bright, too steady, you can never quite tell what's behind them. Is it someone lost like you? Or something that never stopped following? Because out there, on those lonely highways, once the darkness decides to match your speed, it never truly lets go. There's something strangely comforting at the sound of a radio when you're driving alone at night. That soft hum of static between stations, the low murmur of voices far away. It makes you feel less isolated, as though someone else is out there, keeping you company through the silence. But sometimes, the very thing that feels safe can turn against you. Sometimes the voice that reaches you through the speakers isn't a friend at all. It always begins the same way. You're driving through the night, the highway stretching endlessly ahead, the dashboard glowing faintly beneath your fingers. There's no one around, no lights, no movement, just you and the road. The radio flickers, the music fading in and out as you cross through dead zones. It's nothing unusual, just distance, signal loss, the whisper of static that fills the gaps between songs. And then you hear something that doesn't belong. A man once told of a night he'd been driving home from a late shift, a 3-hour stretch through back roads and farmland. He kept his radio low, more to fill the quiet than to listen. Around midnight, the music began to waver, the signal bending like something was interfering with it. He leaned forward, tapping the dial, but then he froze, because through the static a voice came through, soft at first, almost gentle. It said his name. He thought it was a coincidence, maybe a song lyric, maybe his tired mind playing tricks. But the voice spoke again, clearer this time. It said, "Don't look behind you." For a moment he laughed. It was absurd, wasn't it? He was alone on a rural highway. There was no one else around. But the longer he drove, the more that voice seemed to fill the car, weaving through the static, low and steady. It started describing things he could see. The cracked windshield, the coffee cup in his hand, the small tear in his jacket sleeve. Details no one could have known. He turned the radio off. The car fell silent. But a few seconds later, the speakers hissed again, faintly, even though the power was off. The voice came through one last time, quiet and cold. Too late. He said he swerved off the road in panic, the car spinning into the grass. When he looked up, the headlights caught something in the rearview mirror. Someone sitting in the back seat, their face hidden in shadow. By the time he turned around, there was no one there. He never drove those roads again, and to this day he swears that when he closes his eyes at night, he still hears that voice whispering through the static, calling his name. The radio, something so ordinary, can become the line between what's real and what's not. It's a gateway of sorts, isn't it? Invisible frequencies carrying sound across miles of darkness. But who's to say what else might be carried with it? What if, between the songs and advertisements, there are moments, tiny fleeting moments, when something else breaks through, something that doesn't belong to this side? A young woman once told her story. After she survived a near accident on a deserted road, she had been driving home after visiting family, too tired, too far from the next town. Her radio had been her companion for most of the trip. Old songs, late-night hosts, the usual noise that fills the silence. Then suddenly, the broadcast cut out, just static, but through it came a faint hum, almost melodic, like someone breathing close to the microphone. She turned it down, uneasy, and then, over the hum, came a child's voice. It said, "You shouldn't be here." The tone wasn't threatening, it sounded more like a warning. She pulled over, confused and afraid, staring at the empty road around her. Then she saw it, headlights approaching fast from behind, too fast. She tried to start the car again, but it wouldn't turn over. The lights drew closer, the sound of an engine roaring. She threw open her door, ready to run, but before she could, the other vehicle swerved, screeching past and disappearing into the night. When she got back inside, shaken, she noticed the radio had turned itself off completely. The child's voice never returned. Later that night, she learned from a local report that a truck had crashed several miles down the same stretch of highway, minutes after it passed her. The driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. Sometimes, the voices that break through the static aren't there to harm, they're there to warn. But how could anyone know that in the moment? How do you tell the difference between protection and possession, between fear and foresight? There's something deeply unnerving about the way technology behaves when it's touched by something beyond us. Radios that tune themselves, phones that ring from numbers that don't exist, GPS systems that lead drivers in circles, never to be seen again. It's as though the unseen finds its easiest path through the things we trust most. There's an old theory that spirits linger in energy, that they can use sound waves to bridge the gap between their world and ours. If that's true, then what better vessel than a radio? A device built to catch invisible voices. Maybe the air around us isn't empty at all. Maybe every night drive, every stretch of static between stations, is full of echoes from the ones who didn't make it home. And yet, we keep the radio on, because silence is worse, isn't it? Silence makes you too aware of the dark pressing against the windows, too aware of the hum of the engine and your own heartbeat. So we let the voices fill the space, hoping they belong to someone real, hoping the sound that comforts us won't suddenly turn against us. There are highways where radios are known to die suddenly, always at the same mile marker, no matter the make of the car. Travelers say they hear whispers when it happens, voices beneath the static calling out for help, or sometimes laughing. And in those moments you can't help but wonder, are we listening to the past, or is the past listening to us? Because once you've heard a voice that shouldn't be there, you never forget it. It lingers long after the journey ends. You start to notice the faint hiss behind every song, the way the sound warps when you drive through certain stretches of road. You tell yourself it's just interference, just old wires, just coincidence, but deep down you know the truth. Some frequencies were never meant for human ears, and maybe, just maybe, the ones speaking through them were never meant to be forgotten. The next time you're alone on a dark highway, and your favorite song begins to fade into static, listen carefully. You might just hear your name. There are roads that exist like scars, winding stretches of asphalt that carry more than just travelers. Some roads don't simply lead somewhere, they keep you. You see, there's a strange kind of quiet that comes when you've been driving for too long. The world outside your headlights begins to lose its shape, and the distance between here and there starts to blur. That's when you begin to notice things that don't quite make sense. The same signs, the same turns, the same feeling that you've been here before, though you're sure you haven't. It begins subtly, like all strange things do. A driver late at night, heading home after a long trip. The hum of the tires a steady comfort. The radio fades in and out, and the air feels thick, heavy, as though the night itself is pressing against the glass. He passes a broken-down billboard, half-lit and forgotten. He remembers it because of the peeling paint that read, "Turn back before it's too late." It makes him laugh, uneasy but dismissive. 15 minutes later, he sees it again. The same billboard, same missing lights. He thinks maybe there's another one just like it up ahead. But then he passes the same diner, the same gas station, the same sharp curve marked by a warning sign he swears he's seen already. He checks his odometer. He's been driving for nearly an hour, yet the same landmarks keep appearing. That's when the panic starts to set in. He pulls over, checks his map, and even restarts the GPS, but it's useless. The screen shows a blank space, as if the road doesn't exist at all. He turns around, determined to go back the way he came, but when he looks ahead again, he realizes something that chills him to the bone. There is no difference between forward and backward anymore. The road is the same in both directions. He drives anyway, desperate for an exit. But no matter how fast he goes, the night doesn't change. The sky never lightens, the moon never moves. The more he drives, the more the world feels wrong, like it's folding in on itself. The sound of his tires on the asphalt begins to echo, an endless rhythm that grows louder and louder until he can't tell if it's real or coming from somewhere inside him. And then, as if mocking his confusion, the radio flickers to life. A voice, faint and broken, repeats one phrase over and over. "You've been here before." He tries to turn it off, but the voice only grows louder. His lights begin to dim, the air grows colder, and for the first time, he notices something standing on the side of the road. A figure, still and silent, watching him as he passes. He can't make out the face, but he swears he sees it smile. A mile later, there it is again, the same figure in the same place, standing perfectly still. It's as if the road itself is playing with him, showing him the same scene again and again, daring him to realize that he's trapped. Some say he was found days later, parked at the side of the road, eyes open but unseeing, his car out of fuel, and his radio still whispering that same phrase. Others say he was never found at all, that the stretch of highway he described doesn't exist on any map. Only travelers who've been lost in that area tell stories of strange loops, where time seems to bend and hours stretch into eternity. There's another story, one that seems to echo the same pattern. A young couple driving through the mountains late at night, taking a shortcut suggested by their GPS. The road was old, winding, barely lit, and lined with thick trees that seemed to move when the wind blew. After an hour of driving, the woman began to notice something strange. The same roadside diner kept reappearing, its neon sign flickering with the same broken letters. Open all night. Each time they passed, the lights inside looked different. Once empty, once filled with shadows, once with what looked like someone standing at the window waving. They tried turning around. The road twisted back on itself. The GPS lost its signal. Then the man realized something horrifying. The gas gauge hadn't moved. It had been sitting at half a tank the entire time. He tapped the glass, but the needle didn't budge. The world around them had stopped behaving like it should. At some point, they stopped the car and stepped outside. The air was perfectly still. The forest didn't move. Even the stars above seemed frozen in place. They left the headlights on and started walking, hand in hand, but after only a few minutes, they saw the same diner again, its sign humming, its light spilling across the road like a trap. The woman began to cry, realizing they hadn't gone anywhere. When they finally turned back to their car, it was gone, vanished. In its place stood the same rusted billboard, the one that read, "Turn back before it's too late." No one ever saw them again. But sometimes drivers passing through that area report seeing a pair of figures walking along the shoulder, their faces pale, their steps slow, as if searching for a way out that doesn't exist. What is it about these places? Why do some stretches of road seem to trap time itself? Maybe it's the energy of fear that lingers, the remnants of countless lives lost to accidents and despair. Maybe the road remembers. Or maybe there are places where the world is thinner, where the barrier between the living and whatever lies beyond starts to bend and twist until directions lose their meaning. You see, when you drive long enough through the darkness, your mind starts to question what's real. You begin to feel that you're being guided by something unseen. The road ahead looks the same, no matter how far you go. The signs don't change. The air feels heavy, charged with something you can't explain. You think you're moving forward, but maybe you're not moving at all. Maybe you've driven straight into a loop that wasn't meant to be escaped. There's a quiet horror in repetition, a sense of being trapped in a moment that keeps replaying, like a song that never ends. The longer you stay, the less you remember who you were before. The people who've been caught in such places describe it the same way. They remember driving, turning, hoping for something new to appear on the horizon. But it never does. Just the same trees, the same curve, the same flickering light in the distance that keeps calling them back. Perhaps the scariest part isn't being lost. It's realizing that you're no longer sure what lost even means. Because when the world around you stops obeying time, when it begins to fold and echo and repeat, you start to understand that maybe the road doesn't want you to leave. Maybe it's not a road at all anymore. It's something alive, something watching, something that feeds on the endless motion of those who try to escape. And by the time you realize it, it's already too late. Because the truth is, some roads don't take you where you're going. They take you where they want you to stay. Every story leaves something behind, a warning, a whisper, a reminder that no one is ever truly alone out there on the open road. These tales of headlights that don't fade, of voices that break through the static, of roads that loop through eternity. They are more than ghost stories. They are caution signs written in fear, painted with the trembling hands of those who lived just long enough to tell them. And if there's one thing I've learned from all these stories, it's that sometimes the night isn't the danger. It's the comfort of thinking you're safe when you're not. You see, the most haunting thing about these highways isn't what's waiting in the shadows. It's how familiar they feel. The long stretches of darkness, the hum of the tires, the glow of the dashboard keeping you company. It's easy to forget how fragile that sense of safety really is, because in a single moment, it can vanish. One strange sound, one glimpse in the mirror, one flicker of the headlights, and suddenly you realize how alone you truly are. There was a man once who told his story with a voice that shook even years after it happened. He'd been driving home after a late shift, exhausted, the world around him reduced to a blur of lights and shadows. It was past midnight, that hour when even the crickets go quiet. The road stretched ahead like a ribbon of darkness, endless and still. And then, out of nowhere, a figure appeared in his headlights. He slammed on the brakes, heart pounding, but when the car came to a stop, there was nothing there. He stepped out, trembling, his breath visible in the cold air. The road was empty, not a sound. He told himself it was fatigue, his eyes playing tricks, so he climbed back in and started the car again. But when he looked into his rearview mirror, he saw something sitting in the back seat. A shadow, faint but unmistakable. He didn't turn around. He didn't breathe. He just kept driving, praying it was a trick of the light. But as the miles went by, the air in the car grew colder, the radio flickered, and from somewhere behind him came the faint sound of breathing. He said he didn't stop again until dawn. When he finally pulled over and looked back, the seat was empty, but pressed into the leather was the imprint of a hand. That story stayed with me, not because of the ghost, not because of the fear, but because of what it meant. Sometimes we don't realize how close the unseen is. We move through the world thinking the darkness exists outside of us, when often it's right there, waiting quietly beside us. And the truth is, not every haunting begins with the supernatural. Sometimes it starts with a choice. The choice to keep driving when something inside you whispers, turn back. Every instinct we have, every shiver, every moment of unease is a message, but we live in a world that teaches us to ignore them. We reason our fear away, tell ourselves there's nothing there, but fear, real fear, is a kind of protection. It's the soul's way of warning you that something's wrong. And the stories we tell, of trucks that follow, of voices that call our names, of roads that trap time, those stories are not just about ghosts. They're about listening, about paying attention to the stillness between sounds. I think about how many times people have brushed off that inner warning, how many times they've said, it's nothing, kept going. Some of them made it home, some of them didn't. And maybe that's what makes the night so terrifying. Not the things that hide in it, but the fact that you never really know when you've crossed a line you can't come back from. There's an old superstition among long-haul drivers. They say if you ever feel like you've been driving too long without seeing another car, you should pull over and wait. Don't question it, don't rationalize it, just stop, because sometimes the road itself wants to keep you. The ones who don't listen, well, their stories never get told, and yet even knowing that, people still travel these highways alone. They still chase the horizon, chasing silence, chasing something they can't name. Maybe it's because we all believe deep down that we're the exception, that whatever's out there won't find us. But the night doesn't care about confidence. It doesn't care about reason. It moves quietly, patiently, and it only needs one moment, one lapse in attention to reach out and remind you that you're never as alone as you think. A woman once shared her story about a night when her car broke down on a desolate stretch of highway. No signal, no passing cars. Just her, the darkness, and the sound of her own heartbeat. Hours passed. Every time she looked out into the trees, she felt the same thing, that someone was watching. She locked her doors, turned off the lights, and waited for morning. But when the sun finally rose, she stepped out to find something written on the dust of her back window. It said, "Thank you for letting me ride." That's the thing about the unseen. It never announces itself. It doesn't crash through the glass or shout your name. It waits, silent and patient, blending into the rhythm of your heartbeat. And when it finally reveals itself, it's already too late. But if there's a message in all of this, if these stories carry any meaning beyond fear, it's this: always listen. Listen when the air changes. Listen when your instincts whisper that something isn't right. The world around us is filled with warnings, small and quiet, that most people never hear because they're too busy convincing themselves everything's fine. So when you find yourself driving through the dark and the road ahead feels too long, too quiet, listen. When your reflection in the mirror looks just a little too still, listen. When the voice on the radio stutters or the headlights behind you won't fade, listen. Because the ones who don't, the ones who laugh off the chill in their chest, they're the ones the night remembers. The truth is, the danger isn't in the shadows that stretch across the highway. It isn't in the ghosts or the whispers or the endless loops of forgotten roads. The real danger is in believing that nothing could ever happen to you. So when you drive alone at night, don't ignore that feeling. don't silence that small voice that tells you to stay alert, to take the next exit, to turn around. Because sometimes the only thing standing between you and the dark is the choice to listen. And some warnings, if ignored, don't come twice.